Hello and welcome back to the Shed Geek Podcast. Here's a message from our studio sponsor. Let's be real. Running a shed business today isn't just about building great sheds. The industry is changing fast. We're all feeling the squeeze, competing for fewer buyers while expectations keep climbing. And yet, I hear from many of you that you are still juggling spreadsheets, clunky software, or disconnected systems. You're spending more time managing chaos than actually growing your business. That's why I want to talk to you about our studio sponsor, ShedPro. If you're not already using them, I really think you should check them out. ShedPro combines your 3D configurator, point of sale, RTO contracts, inventory, deliveries, and dealer tools all in one platform. They even integrate cleanly into our Shed Geek marketing solutions. From website lead to final delivery, you can quote, contract, collect payment, and schedule delivery in one clean workflow. No more double entries, no more back and forth chaos. Quoting is faster, orders are cleaner. And instead of chasing down paperwork, you're actually running your business. And if you mention Shed Geek, you'll get 25% off all setup fees. Check it out at shedpro.co/ShedGeek. Thank you, ShedPro, for being our studio sponsor, and honestly, for building something that helps the industry.
Welcome back to another Shed Geek podcast, coming to you from Shed Quarters here in Metropolis, Illinois, on a beautiful sunny day. It has cooled down just a little bit, but it is absolutely fantastic outside. Shannon and myself and Deanna and Troy, we are loving the weather here as spring is springing. It's been good to us so far after the deep freeze of the winter. Today, I am joined by Mr. Dillan Hart of BHC Group down in Gulf Shores, Alabama. He has a very interesting company. He and his dad started it. Now they're working together. I think it's going to be awesome. But before we get rolling, just a couple quick things so you all know how to stay plugged in with us. As I always say, the Shed Geek call-in line, a.k.a. Shannon's cell phone. Please give him a call, day or night. Holler at him. That number is 618-309-3648. Email here at the office, info@shedgeek.com, info@shedgeek.com. Of course, go to www.shedgeek.com and explore all the things that we have going on. And if you would like to fill out a contact form there, that is also a perfectly good way to get in contact with us. The Facebook page as well. Send us a messenger message. Shoot us a text on there. The Shed Sales Professionals Group. We just put out a couple short videos talking about how fantastic it is in this industry that we have such a tight-knit Facebook community, a group where everybody can go and can share knowledge and can continue to grow their own operations, their own business. In fact, Dillan has been using that and has been doing a great job of explaining his business on there. And also, before I forget, the call-in line for anyone who is listening and knows someone in the plane community who is in the industry or might just be interested in listening to what's going on in the shed and portable building world. Our plane community call-in line is 330-997-3055. Again, that is 330-997-3055. So please, if you're out there listening and you have anyone in your life that you know would enjoy the podcast, but maybe they're limited to only being able to use the phone, please hand that number off to them. We always love to serve those communities. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest today, Mr. Dillan Hart of BHC Group in Gulf Shores, Alabama. He and his dad, I know in the shed industry, there are lots of father and son operations, lots of family businesses. You don't normally get that in a digital marketing company. Frankly, that's probably more on your dad's generation for not being in that business than your generation, Dillan. But man, tell everybody about yourself, about the company, about maybe how your dad got it started and how you found yourself in the shed industry.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, business. I came and joined the business a little over 2 years ago, or actually probably right at 2 years ago now. And I left school. I was in college for almost 2 years going for accounting, and I was like, I don't know if this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, and I don't know if I want to be behind a desk the rest of my life. Yet here I am, ended up back behind a desk, but I love it. And I enjoy being able to do what I'm doing now and working and being able to spend time with the family while we're working. So that's always fun. But yeah, the dad started the business. Goodness, well over 10 years ago. He was in marketing in the corporate world early on in Nashville, and then he got out of that after a couple of years when he realized the corporate world wasn't what he wanted to be a part of. And so then after that, he started up his own marketing agency, and naturally, it just kind of graduated to sheds and kind of that industry. We were in a community outside of Nashville to where there was a lot of Amish and Mennonite communities, and they didn't have anything digitally, and so they needed somebody. And we had neighbors actually, so they kind of got us started with that. And referrals and word of mouth in those communities goes a long way. So over time we've just grown and become more involved in the shed world and shed side of marketing. So yeah, that's kind of what got us there.
Yeah, we were kind of talking. We had a meeting a week ago or so, I guess, and we were kind of swapping, um, oh, uh, swapping friends, I guess. Swapping names of people down there in those communities. I think you have worked or still work with Hilltop, or maybe
Yeah.
that company it actually
Yeah.
got sold, but they're still producing cabins and tiny homes and everything. And worked with them. We obviously have a ton of contacts and clients and business partnerships and all kinds of things in that area as we're so close. Um, I think it's interesting. Obviously, your dad is not here to speak on it himself, but I'm sure he shared with you the this the idea of the corporate world and especially corporate marketing. It seems like over and over again, even in the industry, a lot of the people who work in this industry in that sort of marketing setting are people who have spent time at agencies, who have spent time, maybe in the in-house corporate marketing department, and just how it wears on people's souls after a while. And
Yeah.
and so that seems to be a common theme. Has he ever shared with you just kind of, obviously it's everything has worked out and the Lord's plan always does, but the way that sort of high stress, fast paced kind of city agency life then winds up, being shed marketers. It has to be a heck of a change of pace and welcomed, I'm sure too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He it's funny. Whenever I first came, I was kind of going toward different industries and trying to figure out where I wanted to take things, because he was like open to be like, hey, if you want to take this a certain direction, we can do that. Which was super great. He was super supportive of me coming home and joining the business, and did everything he could to make it happen while we were figuring it out. And but yeah, he always, I would try and do something with another industry or something, and he would always be like, "Man, our shed guys, they're a lot of them are just laid back, and they're man, super easy to work with, and we get along with them really well." That's the thing, we weren't dealing with people. He doesn't have any clients that really are like nagging and being like, "Hey, I want this right here, right now." You know what I mean?
Right.
They understood, and they took the time to listen whenever he explained how things work. So they understood, hey, we can't just, pop you out a website in 5 hours. You know what I mean? Or I can't have it just nailed, knocked out today. They understood and they would listen. So I think that was nice, because in his corporate world, he didn't, you don't get that. You kind of have boss man telling you, hey, I need this done right now, today.
Yeah.
And, and dad's over there like, well, I need this and that. And he's got to go down a rabbit trail to get all that information. And then, there's just so many pieces to it, you know.
Yeah. No, and I think that, obviously not the entire industry is, Amish or Mennonite or plain community. But I do think that
Right.
there's some DNA in the shed industry where we understand that quality takes time, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
if you want something done well, then it's going to take some time to execute things, and
Yeah.
anything can be taken to the extreme. You don't want to be behind schedule, but at the same time, it does feel like there is an understanding, really across the industry that I mean, this is an industry that sells primarily on quality, or at least that's what the messaging is. I think that we've seen in the last year or so that there is some big kind of pricing advantages, and people are really competing hard on pricing and competing hard on payments. Um, and maybe that's a good place to jump in because I know there has you and I had a conversation whenever we were on a call last week that really led to me saying, gosh, we should talk about this on a podcast, um, where we were really discussing those two different ways of um, approaching sales, approaching the customer, approaching advertising, approaching branding, really. Um, and our kind of conversation centered around the fact that so much of the industry's paid ads, or even organic content to a big degree, so much of like what is being messaged, said, marketed within the industry winds up kind of having that direct ROI, direct sales influence. And we were just talking about how, the sort of general branding, general awareness, the traditional disruptive type of advertising that came on your television in between your show and disrupted, the flow of your television show or your radio advertisement or whatever it's been for so many years. Just how powerful that is. Like what just I mean, I know we kind of touched on it last week, but I know that you have thoughts on this and even some strategies that start to address it.
Are you swimming in leads but struggling to close the deal? It's time to turn those leads into profits with Making Sales Simple, the ultimate sales training program designed specifically for shed sales professionals. At Making Sales Simple, we understand the challenges you face: overwhelmed by inquiries, unsure how to follow up, and missing opportunities that can boost your bottom line. Our proven techniques help you and your team master the art of connecting with customers, building trust, and closing deals like never before. Whether you're new to the industry or a seasoned pro, this training will sharpen your skills, increase your conversions, and drive your business to new heights. Don't let those leads go cold. Invest in your team's success today. Making sales simple, because every lead deserves a closer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like so first off, I guess on that note, like with with Facebook, um Facebook's gotten more and more popular, and
It kind
you
of
know, you
is like network ad, like it's almost like
yeah,
CBS or ABC or NBC now. Probably more popular, really.
right. I think statistics would probably show you that, social media is more popular than just watching TV, Netflix or anything like that. I think social media outweighs all of that, especially when you bring in the amount of time that someone spends on their phone compared to maybe an hour or two at night on their TV. But I'm sure they spend, 3 to 4 hours on their phone throughout the whole day.
Oh, those
Um,
reports at the end of the week or the month or whatever are dreadful to think
yeah,
about. Of course, me and you and whatever, we may be using them for work, but there's plenty of side quests that happen. I mean, that's the whole point, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. But so, I mean, with that said, it kind of brings you into, with marketing, if everyone's spending if that's where most of their time is focused outside of, work or whatever they've got going on throughout the day, but they're quote unquote distractions, or like, where they would normally be watching TV or anything like that. That time's now put on to people's phones, and when they're just scrolling on social media, just looking at stuff, or watching videos on YouTube, whatever it is. But which now Facebook, you can watch long form content on there, and there's videos that are, an hour long or whatever it is, right? So
Basically what we used to would have thought of as YouTube style videos.
yep.
Long form, horizontal, right along with the reels. Now, I mean, all these social media platforms are all thanks to all people, right there. Facebook has now gobbled up some of the old school YouTube long form content, while also adapting the TikTok vertical shorts, that whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and with that, that just backs up even more why so many people spend so much time on them. And kind of what you were talking about with, old school advertising, radio stations or whatever it was to disrupt people's day, and things like that. There's a lot of trying to figure out where to start here, but there's a
It's a
lot
big
of,
topic.
yeah, yeah. When you get into Facebook, it's like, you can do your Facebook posts and all that, and that goes so far. But if you want to really disrupt people's day, right, like we're talking about, and get more people's eyes on your business, because in the shed world, we all know, the last couple of years, especially, it's gotten much more popular with the amount of shed lots that there are around you. And so if you were the only one before, you're probably not anymore. You've probably got three or four around you. You know, and so with that being said, you've got to find your way to stand out. Before I was ever in this industry, I would see a shed lot and just say, hey, there's a shed lot. That's all I thought about it. And I think probably a lot of consumers probably think the same way, unless they're somebody that deals with construction and they understand building and all that. They may go there first and be like, I'm going to do some back end research on quality. But if it was just a normal consumer, I wouldn't fully, before I was involved in the industry, I wouldn't, think about, hey, I really need to research quality. Like I would probably go to the first one that looked appealing from the road and go from there, and I would do a Google search and see which one had the best reviews, and that's definitely applicable today. I think that's a whole nother topic, getting on your organic
That's all right.
Google.
Hey, you just keep flowing, Dylan. You do you, brother.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, that's a big thing. I've seen it a little more recently about people talking about small steps every day, have a big impact. And specifically, they've mentioned, like Google reviews, and I'm always like, yes, this is what I'm talking about, because it's so important. I've seen it in the past with other businesses, and then now, like, Google reviews are they have a lot of weight in how Google ranks your Google business profile. And so when someone searches you up locally, that helps you, show up in front of other people, or, above them. Especially if you want to work toward a business of longevity and not have to worry about always paying for ads. A lot of people will go throw a lot of money at Google ads, but they've got 4 or 5 Google reviews, and they're not putting any energy or effort into that organic, local SEO. And to me, it's like, man, you're always going to be having to spend that money on Google ads, because people will never find you because you don't do those small steps. Man, making consistent posts, making sure your business profile is optimized, and, just consistently getting new reviews it's great.
Yeah,
If
it's so, you know, I think that we've gotten to a place where like the machine is not going to stop, right? Facebook is going to continue to require more and more spend to surface through, they're moving, Andromeda is like the name of the sort of, update, but, effectively what they want is less demographic targeting, um, more of a content led approach. I mean, basically that they want for businesses to pay to surface their content in front of the customer. So they're kind of getting you from both directions. They want you to put more effort, time, and I mean, inevitably money into the actual content itself, and then also pay because they're taking away some of the particular demographic restrictions that they used to have available. And the combination of those two things, is always going to continue to chew up budget. So my personal, it sounds like yours philosophy matches with mine exactly, which is, get those organic pieces in place first. Like make that a priority. That's not to say don't go, you know, don't have a $0 ad budget. You need an ad budget just to drive leads, but be really focused and prioritize those organic lead sources, because it is totally, totally possible to achieve the same lead volume, with a 50% decreased ad budget if your organic SEO results, Google Business Profile, are performing the way that they should. So anyway, not to steal your thunder there, I think we're saying the same thing, but
Yeah.
really being focused on what that presence is and all the things you can control first, and then feed it, right? Then,
Right.
then push people into those tools, that work and are efficient in an organic sense.
Yeah, exactly. You got to have a good foundation before you can start doing the other steps. With ads, it's in this industry, if someone came to us and was like, "Hey, we don't have anything. What do we do?" I would say, "Hey, let's get you a Google Business Profile. I'm going to tell you about how, why reviews are important, why making posts are important. We'll go in and build it out and set it all up for you, optimize it and all that. But we'll get them set up with that foundation first, and then second, I'm going to be like, "Hey, let's get you a website going. Whether it needs to be a smaller, simple one to start." Or if you've got the budget to get a bigger, elaborate one to show off everything you're doing in detail, because that gets your foundation set. Because you just got to think of all the ways people are going to find you. If you don't have a website to really back and talk about your business, I think that you take a hit from that. If you've got a Facebook profile instead, I think that's good, but I think a website's got more value there, and you can just show a lot more content and information about what you're doing. So it's super important there. If you've got a Google page, that's kind of another outside source of how people even find you in the first place. And so you've got to have those foundations first, especially before you go running ads, because you can run Google ads and Facebook ads all day long. And if you don't have good quality, landing pages or content anywhere where you can really build trust and, people confidently look at you and your business and think, okay, yeah, they look pretty like a good choice. If you can't do that, then you're just wasting money, throwing it at ads. So you've got to have that foundation first. But
if you're in the shed business, you already know the hard part isn't selling. It's keeping everything organized once the orders start coming in. Quotes, dealer orders, change requests, delivery schedules, it adds up fast. Consumer Aligned Logistics, or CAL, is software built specifically for the shed industry. It brings orders, dealer management, integrations, payments, and delivery tracking into one system so nothing slips through the cracks. CAL works with tools like IdeaRoom, ShedPro, and Sensei, and it's designed to adapt to how your business actually operates, not force you into a rigid process. Pricing is volume-based. As you grow, we grow. If you're ready to replace spreadsheets, paperwork, and disconnected tools with one platform built for sheds, head to calcanhelp.com and schedule a demo. Cal helps shed businesses scale with clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe kind of like circling then to, you've built the foundation. Everything on that sort of organic side is optimized. I think the natural thing from business owners is to think from an ROI perspective, like a unit perspective on pretty much everything, which is perfectly reasonable. But I think that so you build up your organic stuff, your website is performing, Google Business Profile is performing, 3D Designer is converting, you're pushing people from Google Ads into those assets. You're also using the more like lead based Facebook campaign. So you're pushing people to your website. Maybe you're even using forms, whatever else. At some point, you get to a point where all of that leads based advertising has kind of taken up the space that it can as well. And frankly, at that point, you should be pretty darn successful, right? You should be selling, you should be, a perfectly stable company. I think what winds up happening in that phase is then when people start thinking about, okay, now we're established, we have operations, maybe we have locations, maybe we just sell out of our primary manufacturing plant. It's all, more or less the same. Um, but then they start thinking about, well, now how do I start filling in all the niches? How do I start taking some market share, right? How do I start holding a higher um, status in the consumer's mind in my market, so that they're willing to pay a slightly more premium price over my competitors, right? You start to think about some of these strategy things, and I know that the way that you kind of approach some of that disruptive, what I would call old school advertising, general branding, but applying that to Facebook, I thought you had a really good philosophy on that. Maybe kind of just walk us through what your mindset is, because there are a lot of companies out there, a bunch, I would say most companies really kind of fit that bill, no matter whether you're still operating out of, a primary location that delivers 100 miles, 150 miles. Maybe you've got a dealer network, that extends that out to 300 miles or whatever it might be. But lots and lots of shed companies around the country are in a pretty similar circumstance to this.
Yeah. Yeah. So to kind of go off what you said, like if you want to establish quality, we already talked about how so many people are on their social media. So how do you take it to the next level? And what you said, it's like kind of old school marketing in a way, except you just got to modernize it a little bit using social media. You mentioned lead forms too. We for a long time we pushed on that with Facebook too, and it was like, hey, you kind of get a little bit more junk than you do from Google, but you're paying a lot less. So it started to work out, and sometimes depending on if you did it right, we would see better ROI from Facebook leads rather than Google in a way, just because they're so expensive on Google. But now we're seeing that it's become so it's full of so many people marketing that same way and posting the same kind of content, and the content quality is really low. So we're kind of adjusting our approach more recently, and I think we're seeing much better results from that, especially long term. So before we were trying to use Facebook almost as in almost to get like short term leads, which is what Google's always been great for, because you can do keyword campaigns, right, and get people that are actively looking for sheds, but the cost is so expensive. So then you go to Facebook, and then you're trying to get, higher intent people with that. Well, the problem there is Facebook's, most people aren't getting on there to say, hey, let me find, a shed near me. Sometimes, but it's very rare. So
Right.
we started to see that the quality for lead forms and things have started to drop. And that's kind of too much of an early ask to be like, hey, fill out your form and get this stuff. And, and it's worked, but we've recently found the way to improve that by doing what we call, just basic like awareness campaigns. And so I think how I explained it to you guys last week was, we may create a campaign with 14 different ads in it. And we're able to control how often, someone sees each ad. So they may see ad number 1 once every 7 days. And it forces Facebook to show them ad number 2 through 14 within those, within those 7 days, if they're on Facebook that much. But the goal is that it doesn't show them ad number 1 every single day, multiple times a day. It'll only show ad number 1 at most once every 7 days. So that way they don't get what, you may see now is ad fatigue, where it's like, man, this company's had the same ad going for 4 months. And, it's like, it's repetitive. And in a way, it sometimes is like, all right, I'm tired of seeing this. You ever watch TV and it's like you've seen the same commercial over and over again, and you're like, I don't even care about this company. I will never do business with them because I have seen it a million times, and it's on my nerves now. So I kind of think of it in the same way as that. It's like you got to really mix it up. getting new content every single month or, multiple times a month, especially, is really hard too. So we found this campaign do a really good job of just mixing it up without creating that ad fatigue. And if you can replace some of the content, every month, say, if you had 14 ads, you could replace, 2 or 3 each month. Or if you're like, hey, you go through it once a year, it's going to be much better than you just doing those same ads that, just create that ad fatigue. And so the point behind those ads too is each one targets a different aspect of your business. So it really explains like what your business is about, and going back on like how quality is so big in this business, but there's a lot of price, competitions right now. And so everyone's trying to get a lower price. Well, therefore, the quality's got to drop. So if you're wanting to be a business that really does sell high quality stuff, and you want to outbeat the other guys, or just be able to charge a higher price, whatever it is, you can use this to your advantage, because you can explain every aspect of your business. You can explain the quality details. From my perspective, before I was in the shed industry, when I didn't know anything about it, if I saw these ads, the ad could talk about a problem with most sheds, but then it could say, but our sheds are like this and built with this. And to me, as a consumer, I may have never thought of that problem, but you just brought it up and I'm seeing it now. So now I'm like, oh, that's smart and that's a good idea. And so then that builds trust with me with that business. Hope that makes sense with my little analogy there, but
Yeah, no, absolutely it does. And I think you've honestly hit on a few, a few, like problems, may sound a little negative, and I certainly don't mean, to sound negative, but a few of the hurdles, that the industry does have, um, which would be that I think there's a tendency to kind of talk to itself a lot. There's a tendency to um, have this kind of assumption that everybody should know that. Like
right.
what do you mean you don't understand why? Like why is a notched runner um, better, right? Well, rigidity, stability, right? Like you kind of take some of these features, and people, I'm not saying people don't communicate them. It's just, it's not always in a way that actually speaks to a consumer who is so far removed from construction and construction
Yeah.
techniques. And like, the average American consumer has absolutely no idea. So starting at square one a lot of times is really hard for the industry, because the people who are talking about these benefits and talking about why it's better have so many years of product knowledge and construction knowledge and craftsmanship, sometimes passed down for generations, as to why you actually, use that style of joinery, or why you shape your truss that way, or, like these things are so kind of, deep in the DNA of the industry, that sometimes it's just hard for people to actually bring it all the way back to square one and be like, hey, look, this guy has, like, his extent of construction knowledge was buying a hammer when he got married. You know what I mean? Like that's it. Like moved out of the house,
Yeah.
bought a hammer, like maybe has attempted to hang a picture on the wall, and probably just stuck a nail into drywall
Yeah.
without catching a stud, right?
Yeah.
Like I mean, like you really have to bring it all the way back, and so I think that there's a problem there just in the content in general, because really high information content just adds so much value to your brand.
Yeah.
And starting that information down at the bottom level is going to feel almost painful for a lot of
Yeah.
people in this
Yeah.
industry. But you touched on another thing there too, which is the actual content itself, and refreshing it, and keeping it up to date, and kind of like you said, if you could get 2 or 3 to kind of swap out in rotation, you found that works pretty well. you know One thing that's always been challenging, for us here at Shed Geek, is whenever you are needing that sort of fresh pictures, fresh video, whatever it is, that, there are some legitimate restrictions. Some people in the industry just can't do that, by the restrictions of their church and their faith and everything else. But sometimes it's just hard to kind of just get people moving on it. I don't know how that gets fixed, but it almost feels like there needs to be a roving crew of two or three guys with cameras and microphones that just do
Yeah.
nothing but stay on planes all day. How do you help, or how do you encourage, or what do you do to try and get your customers kind of in the rhythm of that regular exchange of, like, digital assets, so to speak?
If you're a shed dealer or manufacturer, you already know how to sell the practical solutions your customers are seeking. Storage, utility, livestock shelters offer the fix for those day-to-day pain points. But what if part of your lot could do something more? Playmore Swing Sets and Stryker Hunting Blinds are proud to be the exclusive providers of outdoor play equipment and hunting structures for the Shed Geek podcast, because both brands help dealers do something rare in this industry: increase margins while selling fun. Playmore Swing Sets are tall, colorful, and impossible to miss. They turn your lot into instant eye candy and give families a reason to point, stop, and walk your lot. Stryker Hunting Blinds bring the same effect: bold, premier structures that attract serious outdoorsmen and carry strong margins with minimal footprint. Together, these structures give shed dealers a powerful advantage: diversification in your product mix, an expanded customer base, and the ability to sell products on the joy they bring, not just function. If you're interested in learning more, just click the link in this episode's newsletter or dial 330-674-3900 and let us know that you heard us on Shed Geek. Playmore Swing Sets and Stryker Hunting Blinds, we sell fun, and you can too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm right there with you. We've discussed multiple times what the logistics and cost would be to travel around and get content, because it makes a world of difference. And that's, I think, one of the biggest and easiest ways to stand out when we're talking about this social media marketing, and even on your website, like having high quality stuff, because there are so many businesses and companies out there with just mediocre stuff. And again, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's just all somebody can get, right? And they're not in that world, of where I've grown up in it, maybe a little bit more, to where, like, I know, hey, hit this certain angle or things like that, and it looks really good and visually just appealing. But so for our clients, we try and just walk them through, like, hey, we try and explain, the reasonings for what we're trying to get, and I guess just really what we're trying to get. And I think once they get that, they start to understand a little bit better. Once they understand what we're trying to get and why, and why we need things to be a certain way. When you've got an image and you go up and take a picture of a shed, and you're so close to, when you crop it horizontally, it cuts off half the building, it's unusable at that point for us. If it's going to go on your website or things like that. But teaching little techniques, we try and tell people, luckily we've got access to a lot of content, so we can show people, hey, this is the idea of, like, what you're trying to get here. And sometimes, you can compare and contrast. You can be like, hey, look, here's this, and here's that. Like, we want this, not the other. So just kind of walking with our clients on that. And two, I think we mentioned it last week when we talked a little bit, is just depends on the client and their ability, what they can do. Some have, higher abilities than others. They've got more resources and access to more things. Some people have drones already, and nice cameras. Others don't. Other businesses have young guys that they're like, hey, you can be in the video. And then there's other guys who are like, man, I'm older and I don't want to be in the video, And
I've lived my whole life without being on the video. You know what I mean?
right.
I'm not starting now.
Yeah, exactly. So we try and just tailor it to each business. It's generally how we go about it. But I think really once you explain what you're trying to do, it helps. I did want to touch on something you mentioned earlier, with talking about the content, about how these guys have been in it so long. And I related that to, it's like us in the tech world. I can use all these terms, but a lot of our clients are like, I have no clue what that is. I've never heard about it. I refer to your Google business profile to GBP, a lot of times. And in my emails, I try and break it down, because I understand most people are going to look at that and be like, what? But it's the same thing in the industry with your content too. people have taken a step to then start and try and explain why their stuff is good, but they use certain words or details that don't appeal to what you said. The guys who know absolutely nothing about what you're selling, and I think most consumers are probably that's probably going to be the majority of your type of consumers. And the guys who do understand those things, they're going to understand it they're still going to understand it if you create content that appeals to the guy that knows nothing about it. Because they may show up on your lot and be like, oh yeah, do you have this certain type piece, right? This detailed thing. And as long as you're like, yes, that's exactly what that is. But in the video, I'm not going to go say, hey, this wood has these kind of notches or something like that. Because to the guy that knows nothing about shed, he cares nothing about the way, he doesn't see how that's relevant because he just doesn't know, he doesn't know, they don't know what they're looking at and they don't know what they're talking about. So, in that way, I think taking it back a step to like just being able to explain it, I don't know the right word. I always jokingly say like dummy terms, like put it in dummy terms for me. Like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about.
Like
So I
people
think
say,
just sometimes,
talk to a 6-year-old. That's like a
yeah,
thing that, like, people say, could you say this to a 6-year-old and like them grasp or be able to repeat or whatever kind of what the concept is. And it's one of those things that also it's such an irony in this industry because lots of dealers are really good at this. Lots of independent dealers who don't necessarily have like, the ad budget, that the big company, the manufacturer has to go and push out some of those messages. A lot of the dealers are pretty close to being that ideal consumer. They are people who, for whatever reason, maybe they have a different business or they've got sometimes just like road frontage, and
yeah,
so like the independent dealers out there a lot of times are coming at sheds from that like very consumer level perspective, and as a
right,
result really produce content that does a better job. But then frequently, because they're working on whatever it might be, I think pretty common right now is somewhere between 10 and 14%, 14 being the high end, obviously, but they're working on a 10 to 14% commission. And like, they just don't have the budgets, especially as they're growing the company. You think about what that means. If you're on 10%, you sell $1 million, you make 100,000, you know, but $100,000 by the time it pays for all those marketing activities, it pays lot rent, it pays utilities, it pays insurance. Not to mention what you have to take home to actually live, right?
right,
Like, they just don't have the ability a lot of times to invest in some of the same activities. But I do find that just that shift in frame of reference, because I think just like all industries, I mean, plumbers, get into it with each other about who knows more about plumbing, who's seen more, who did a fancy valve that made this work one time, or it doesn't matter. HVAC, pick a discipline, and there's always that kind of dynamic. But I do think that a little bit uniquely in the shed world, there's almost a little bit of the dynamic that, like, you almost want to say things in a way that tests another person that sees, like, now is this
yeah,
person a carpenter? Well, I'll just tell you, your customers are not carpenters, or they would have built their own shed. Like that's
right,
that's the
right,
sort of secret here. But um,
right.
so uh, you know, I'm not sure what the fix is for a lot of that, other than for guys like you to really just slow it down, take it step by step. Both, like you're saying, the things that you've taught yourself to do in talking to clients and really bringing it back down to, okay, whenever someone searches for the type of service or good that you have, this is what pops up. This is
Yeah,
what's called a Google Business Profile. You almost have to teach people to bring it back to that level, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. You got to, and that's where that's where you've got to start. And being able to do those just basic things is super important. And just like what we're talking about with Facebook, like you've got to be able to do those just basic things, don't, and I guess back on like the awareness campaign type things, like don't overcomplicate it, simplicity is a big thing here. And, yeah, back to like old school marketing, like it's a big thing, just keeping it simple. If you just post, if those 14 ads I mentioned, right? Like if you just had good quality images of different style building, and you had your logo in the bottom left where it was visible enough to where if someone looked at that and stopped for a second, they would see your logo, and then, then they're going to see your stuff for the next 3 months, and they're going to see your different posts and things like that. And then they become familiar with your brand. That's the whole goal. And then after that time, whenever that time is that they're ready to go buy a shed or a tiny home, whatever it is, they're like thinking, hey, I need to find this company because I've seen their stuff, for so long. If by that time, the goal is that you've built a lot of trust with them and shown how you're different from all the other guys and how you're the ideal business to buy from rather than the other competitors. So, but it all goes in with digital marketing. It's like Google Business Profile, your website, your Facebook. Used to Facebook, I didn't think, it wasn't really as relevant, but now we're in a world where it's so big. It's like it's pretty relevant now. In any kind of business, before it was like you could, post some pictures on there. So if people come across it, it's at least showing that you're active and, you don't want to be one of those businesses that's like, hey, I haven't posted since 2024, like it at least
That's the
shows that
easiest
you're,
way to tell, right? That's the
yeah,
easiest way. I mean, whenever we do, I guess market research, basically, whenever we're out here searching up a company, the easiest way to tell, like, are they active? Are they looking to grow? Are they pursuing, a strategy of X, Y, or Z, is just to go and check and see, like, well, if they have activity, right? And
yeah,
then what that activity says. And like, this is common, this is a common way that people have learned to use these resources. Um, and so, I think that your approach and, um, not only with Facebook and that general advertising, awareness advertising, that true old school disruptive, let's bring a message to the consumer that is can be sequential, like you're saying, right? We want this, then that, then that. So you can bring sequential messages, such an advantage over television and radio, where you have no idea who particularly is watching. You can bring retargeted, so you can actually say, because they watched this, then that, I would now like to show them this other thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Retargeting, you're, but really focusing on bringing that message back down, starting truly at square one with a, bottom up kind of a branding and awareness campaign that builds trust, speaks the language that the consumer can actually understand. Um, and also, we haven't even, we're running up against what I continue to, every time I say, I'm going to try and keep it to 45 minutes. I feel like I run over, but, and we're not even getting into some of the other fun parts, of that conventional branding, which is, a mascot, a jingle, right? Like the other things that just continue to drive that brand deeper and deeper, into your subconscious awareness. Um,
yeah,
but these are the activities that actually gain market share in a market where you've done all the effective things, right? You are appearing to people. Your website, once they get there, is converting people. Your Facebook marketplace ads are always updated and you're rotating. Um, your Facebook lead forms, if you still have a version of lead forms running, is effectively converting those. Messenger, same thing, pushing people to the website. Like, you're doing all the things, so then when you get to a point where it's like, okay, Now, how do I, and so is everybody else, right? Because for most people out there at this point, the shed industry has become big enough and competitive enough that in pretty well, every market or every market, certainly in every market's delivery area, maybe not literally in every single town, but in your delivery area, you have two or three other shed companies that are also doing all those things and doing them perfectly well and collecting the leads. And, you're kind of competing on that cost per conversion basis, so then how do you really start to grow the brand in a way that takes other people's market share? And it's exactly what you said. It's having those general branding, general awareness campaigns that are not directly targeted at converting that person right that second, because that person doesn't, they're just like, whoa, 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 whoa. What do you mean? And I'm all for promotions. I want to be specific about that. Promotions work. It's why people have always run buy one, get one, 10% off, Black Friday, after Thanksgiving, right? Like they work. But also, when you're coming at people and the first thing that they see from your company, they're 22 years old. They just graduated college. They have never once in their life gotten, gotten on anybody's, data trackers. They've never gotten on somebody's Pixel or, Metapixel or Google Tag or any of that. And so I guess what I'm saying is, those people who are just kind of fresh into becoming, your ideal consumer, that's the time to just start that general awareness, and build up to the point where you can then convert them into a super high quality lead. So, I know that this conversation in and of itself is going to make some people uncomfortable because everybody wants a sort of ROI metric that is immediate, that tells them exactly how this campaign performed this month. But as this industry continues to progress and be more competitive and work its way into every little niche, these are the activities that actually start to make the difference.
All right, shed and carport industries, let's talk about the part of the shed and carport business nobody puts on the brochure. The moment a customer says, "We love it, we just need to think about the money." That's exactly why J-Money is the exclusive finance partner of the Shed Geek podcast. Because here's the truth. The need for steel buildings and storage buildings exists, but often the money isn't available, or they just don't want to drain their savings. And when you can offer financing at the point of sale, it's a game changer. Conversion rates jump 20 to 30%, and average sale size can increase 30 to 50%. With J-Money Loan Solutions, the process is fast, simple, and paperless. They offer unsecured loans from $1,000 to $100,000, with terms up to 20 years, and it's nationwide. You, the contractor, choose from free plans or promotional plans, like no interest, no payment options. Funds get distributed directly to you. You control when you get paid, and there are no sign-up fees and no annual fees. Even better, there's no recourse to you if a customer doesn't pay. Stop letting "we'll think about it" steal your next sale. Offer financing with J-Money and grow like a pro. Check them out at jmoneyllc.com and tell them the Shed Geek podcast sent you.
Definitely, and I think they're the activities that aren't going to break the bank. They're like these awareness campaigns we're talking about, like, depending on how far you want to reach and all that, but they're the cheapest campaigns we run.
Right.
Compared to lead forms, depending on how you do your lead forms and all of that, your costs can range. But if you're wanting a high quality lead, which means you're probably making them fill out a bunch of information, your costs are going to be really high. And, we probably run awareness campaigns an awareness campaign with 14 different ads cheaper in a day for these smaller businesses, than they would spend on a really, really high quality lead from Facebook. We're able to do that. So it's a much cheaper way just to get your face out there. And, Yeah, we're just seeing much better results. Talking about lead forms specifically with Facebook, that was the approach we used to do, was all lead forms. And now we're splitting off that budget with these awareness campaigns, and we're actually seeing it drive our lead form cost down, which is
Right.
really good. So
Yeah.
now we're able to then crank up the quality a little bit more, and we're not having to like raise the price on what we're getting. We're able to still get a high quality lead. We're able to get it at a cheaper price now because of these awareness campaigns. So we're already doing better there. And along the way with these awareness campaigns, we're sending people to just look at the website and things like that. So then we're getting more conversions just directly at the website too, and things like that. And that all helps again with the whole branding aspect. Now they've seen your website, they've seen your business, they know what you're about, and all the things. You talk about the 22-year-old. It's like, he may not know it now, but in 4 years, he's going to be like, I've seen these guys around. I know they're my local go-to guy, or, within 50 miles or however long, they're who I want to buy from. I remember, the ads that they would run and showing, what this nice shed looked like in the back of someone's yard after they did a fully finished out backyard, all built around it and stuff. And they're like, man, that ad really showed the experience and kind of the result of buying their shed. You know what I mean? And kind of made it just, I think that makes that connection with people, and they're like, I want that shed, because that doesn't just look like a shed thrown in a backyard or somewhere random. It's meshed in with someone's backyard completely. It fits,
Intentional.
and they're like, I want that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. No, hey, look, I think your philosophy is fantastic. I think you're approaching this in such a good way and with such enthusiasm. And I know, kind of bringing that youthful energy, to the company that your dad started. I just think that you guys have such a good operation going on, and are doing such a good job, at that strategy, at that very base level of what are we saying? Why are we saying it? Are we actually talking to the customer? And now let's walk them through these different kind of phases, and really prime them to be a great customer. I mean, it's awesome that the awareness campaigns are driving down the cost of the actual lead forms,
right.
which of course that's what you would expect. You're
Yeah,
getting the message in front of them while not making a direct ask, right?
exactly.
Then
Yeah.
whenever you do come back and have a campaign, whether that's a direct retargeting campaign, or whether you basically just get overlap, inside of those two demographic areas or whatever it might be, however you're setting those up, for your own strategy. But either way, you do have all of the tertiary benefits. So I think it is very important that people start thinking in this direction, because competition, the shed industry, the markets out there are starting to demand it, and the people who start adopting it and figuring it out sooner rather than later are ultimately going to have the advantage. So, thank you, Dylan, so much for being on today. Really enjoyed our conversation last week. Enjoyed our conversation again here today. Any final thoughts? Maybe go ahead and give people, how to reach out to you, what the best way is. Of course, you all always know that you can reach out to us here at the Shed Geek Podcast, and we're always happy to put you in touch, do a handoff, even jump on a meeting with you, if that helps kind of decipher through some of these things. So tell us how to get to you, Dylan.
Yeah, you guys can reach out to us at bhcgroup.biz. And then you can also, give us a call at 615-538-8254. And my extension is 702. So last note is regarding social media. I do recommend, we've seen this get more popular with the AI stuff, and I would say I would urge everyone to be careful with AI stuff. If and in the way is if you're using it to enhance pictures and things like that, it's okay, and I think it can work. But I think whenever you start getting into AI videos where they've got AI generated person, and I think you got to be very careful with that. So just a little last
Tarnishing.
little note for social media is be careful. I think authenticity is a lot of people are noticing that and more drawn to that now because and all over the world and social media has just flipped to all this AI stuff. And I think a lot of people are, you know, they're over it in the content aspect, especially when it comes to actually buying something. If they're looking for entertainment, sure, it's fine. But if they're like, hey, I want to go buy
Maybe
something,
it's even rough. I mean,
yeah,
maybe, but even in that aspect, I mean, it's still pretty rough. The stuff that's good is good with a lot of and it's good with a lot of hands, a lot of human hands still like helping it to be good, and
right,
especially for small businesses and the types of folks out there listening right now. We just the resources to be able to produce that type of content and then also edit it and also continue to prompt back and forth and find something that doesn't just really kind of the uncanny valley is the old terminology for those things that are like close enough to being real but far enough away from being genuine that they
yeah,
almost cause that like tactile response of like the skin or the hair on the back of your neck to stand up or goosebump, and it just kind of feels icky. And I think that, in that area of branding and brand awareness and old school advertising and everything like that, like there's really a high potential to do some damage to that overall like public image, that overall brand image. If you're not just really, really doing a good job, especially on the content side.
yeah,
I think people have accepted it on the text side. I always try to back out the M dashes, like if like
yeah,
try to take away some of those tendencies of the models. Although I would argue the M dash, actually makes a good impact. Like Mark Twain, those guys wrote with a lot of M dashes, and it makes for a better sentence. But
yeah,
so
yeah.
maybe real humans should bring it back more. But anyway, that is a great final thought, Dylan. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for your time and your thoughts and sharing your expertise with everyone. Please come back. I'd love to have you back, and let's continue to track the progress across all of the new digital frontier. As the spring and summer and the rest of the selling season kind of go by.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it and I enjoyed it.
Absolutely glad to have you. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time on another episode of the Shed Geek Podcast.
Thanks again, ShedPro, for being the Shed Geeks studio sponsor. If you need any more information about ShedPro or about Shed Geek, just reach out. You can reach us by email at info@shedgeek.com or just go to our website, www.shedgeek.com, and submit a form with your information, and we'll be in contact right away. Thank you again for listening, as always, to today's episode of the Shed Geek Podcast. Thank you and have a blessed day.